Welcome to Talking Buffalo, featuring conversations with guests from around the world of sports, media, pop culture, and all things Buffalo. With your host, Patrick Moran.
All right, what is going on, everybody? How you doing? Welcome for a second consecutive night, a live episode of Talking Buffalo, your weekday daily driver for Buffalo Sports Talk and more. My name is Patrick Moran. Big thank you to everyone out there, as always, for watching, for listening, following, subscribing. On the video side, we're actually live here on a Thursday night. Last night, Joe Marino, Locked On Bills, joined me from Sunny Reds. I am right back at it tonight. I am at Imperial Pizza. It's kind of like my home field, I feel like, in the podcasting game. And I am joined by a special guest, one of my good friends in real life. Like say real life too. True. Podcasting, of course. Probably has been on the podcast more than anybody has ever been on this podcast. We had a really good run. Yeah. We had a really good. Joe from Queens might be slowly but surely catching you, man.
I don't know if I'm catching him.
Anyway, I'm talking about, of course, Joe Yerdon, Noted Hockey Maintenance Day co-host of the podcast with Matt Savoie, the Buffalo News. What's going on, man? How you doing?
Doing good, man. The off season, I'm ready for the off season to be done.
Yeah,
I'll tell you right now.
Bored a little bit? You get a little bit bored during this time of year?
I'm definitely bored because like free agency was done like 3 days after. It was like July 4th. It was like, all right, we're done here, and like the draft got like everything happened in 2 weeks, and then we had development camp was part of that 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. Now we've had nothing for over a month now, and now it's kind of like, all right, let's get on with it here. I know football's going, so let that take the main. Not that hockey's ever taken the stage away from football, but
and let's be clear with the audience if they don't know already, if they're new to the show. Joe covers the Buffalo Sabres, but Joe's also a sports guy, football guy, and I haven't said this in a while. By the way, this is episode 850 of the show.
What?
850 of these bad boys. Yeah, this is episode 850. Wow. Anyway, Joe is not a Buffalo Bills fan. Correct. Joe is what would you like to call it? A Buffalo Bills watcher.
Buffalo Bills watcher.
You are a Buffalo Bills watcher, which I like talking Bills with you for that reason, because I know I'm going to get something that's unemotional and objective from you. And I like that, as opposed to just always talking to Bills content creators who are Bills fans. Yeah. Kind of like, I am as well. This was supposed to be a Yerdon after dark. Your Sabres after dark, like having Yerdon after dark. And the plan was, we're at Imperial Pizza. We're going to be outside in the patio. Right. But they got the garage down, like the garage doors down. And it's a little hot out there. And it's comfortable as hell in here, man. I like Yerdon after dark, but I like being comfortable a lot more. The AC's pumping there.
Yeah, I don't think anybody needs to see Pat and Joe sweating it out on the patio. That's unattractive all around.
Well, you know what made us sweat it out, regardless of where we were outside, inside of those wings that we just had there in Imperial. Yeah. This was a spicy adventure. We had medium lemon pepper, which were spicy, Cajun medium, which were definitely spicy. And then I remember a couple of years ago you were here and you liked the Jamaican jerk. Yeah. And we had those. Mm-hmm. Those had some heat to them, man. I was suffering through those a little bit. They were delicious, great flavor, but man.
I know when you do rankings, it's always based on the medium sauce, but like the Jamaican jerk wings here, like the sauce is banging. Yeah. It's just a really good Jamaican jerk sauce. So if you're into that flavor at all, like get that flavor wing here, because it's worth it. It'll stick in your fingers. You'll smell the sauce in your fingers for 3 days afterwards, but it's worth it. Trust me, it's worth it.
Let me ask you this. And again, we're going to get into some Bills stuff, some Sabres stuff, maybe a little bit of Yankee stuff. Got the Yankees hat on. I'm a Yankees fan, of course, too, as well. Maybe we'll get in that. Of course, now they're going to go open up the garage. So no, you're after dark, I guess. I guess for us.
Cooled off just enough.
Normally, like if I was coming here for the first time, I like to kind of have wings that are medium or hot, normal wings. But I've done so many shows here. I've enjoyed wings here at Imperial so much that I like to kind of get different flavors and mix them up. If you weren't here to do a show, like if you were just coming here or you were just going to meet another buddy at whatever bar, maybe you're going somewhere by yourself. When you get wings, are you getting like a signature flavor type, or are you like the kind of guy who will go somewhere and get like traditional hot or traditional medium?
If it's a place I've never been, I'll go for the medium because that that sets the bar for me to know like if the sauce is good or if they make the wings good or what have you. Like because if the place can't make the wing, I'll never order them again. But I mean, around here, everybody knows how to make wings, so like that's not a problem. But it's always a question of what the sauce is going to be.
Sure.
And so like if it's a new place and I haven't had them before, I'm like, all right, give me the medium. Let's see what we're dealing with there, and then branch out. Unless they've got some specialty sauce that is like completely out of left field, where I'm like, all right. Okay, like I'll wing it. Like I'll wing it.
Elmo's is. I feel like you're speaking about Elmo's.
But
I kind of feel like.
Well, I mean, yeah. Elmo's. I mean, you're just mixing flavors up. You're doing the double dips. You're doing all that stuff. That's a different ballpark. Of fun. Like,
get a lot of arguments with my wife about that too. Well,
really?
As good as those are, you can't call those wings, or like you can't rank those as wings because you're eating Cajun double dip at Elmo's and you're eating traditional hot wings at 911 Tavern or Imperial Pizza, places like that.
Yeah, I mean, you can order it's just straight up medium or hot or whatever from Elmo's, and like, that's fine. But you're kind of costing yourself. It's just fun. Like,
what are you doing? What are we doing here? If you and I went to Elmo's, I'd be like, what are you doing? What are we doing?
Yeah, it's Cajun hot or Cajun medium double dipped. Like that's my jam there. I people go nuts for the honey mustard one there too, but like it's not really my favorite flavor. Honey mustard, like it's whatever.
The funny thing about this place here is the wings are great, but it's the pizza, man. It's about the pizza. We neither of us had pizza. Not really eating much pizza at all, actually, lately at all. But Imperial Pizza obviously is known for pizza. This is just a great vibe. It's always fun to be here and do these shows at Imperial Pizza. All right, so we're in the summertime now. The Sabres haven't started yet. Bills have started camp. Where do you want to go? I'll tell you what. We were talking about this over dinner too.
Yeah.
We probably had a better podcast within a podcast than we're going to have during this show, and that's something that always seems to happen. I try not to pick my guests' brain when I meet with them before the show, or I try not to talk about too many things. I want to save it for the show, but I always tend to just get going. And one of the things we talked about, let's start here. We're going to dive right in.
Yeah, let's go
to both teams, and we'll talk some Bills and we'll talk some Sabres. But let's combine them right now.
Okay.
I'm going to ask you the question that I asked you when we were eating earlier. Of these two teams, the Buffalo Bills and the Buffalo Sabres, for various reasons, obviously they're different. But which of those two teams coming into this season right now do you feel has more pressure on them? It's not an easy answer.
No, the easy thing to say is the Bills because they're one of the Super Bowl contenders. Like that's the goal. Like they've got a hill to get over. They got to beat Kansas City. You got to get to the AFC title game. You got to get the Super Bowl. There's a list of things. I mean, hey, maybe you can get there and not have to play Kansas City. Then it's whatever.
Yeah.
But like that's where they got to go. Like that's the plateau that they're on. That's what they've got to take care of. Whereas Buffalo, it's feels like it's grade school where it's like get to the playoffs. Duh. Like let's do that. But it's been 13 years now, and they haven't gotten back there, and half the league makes the playoffs. And for 13 years, they've not been one of that 50 percentile of teams. And I was pretty convinced I was going to say the Bills beforehand, but I think it's the Sabres because I think if they miss the playoffs and if they miss it in an ugly fashion, like if they have like 100-point season and that's not good enough to make the playoffs, that's just a tough break. That's a tough break. But if they have another 80-point season, things are going to change again.
I'll say it. You're going to have an ex-general manager of the Buffalo Sabres if they have an 80-point season right now. I'm with you. I say it's the Sabres too for different reasons. Again, you would say, well, just making the playoffs. Duh. Well, we could have been saying that for 13 straight years now for the most part. The general manager is quite literally GMing for his job, I feel like. You made a bold decision. You fired Granato before an extension even kicks in, which I respect the hell out of that. I like the fact that Terry Bagula was not afraid to eat an extension that didn't even start yet. He concluded, I know a lot of people and a lot of media folk are not happy that he doesn't speak to the media. And if I was covering the team, the beat, I would be probably the same way. But I don't, and I'm not. I don't give a shit if he talks to the media. I care about action. Anyway, my point was this: he replaces Granato, but a lot of coaches out there in the pool, and he circles back to Lindy Ruff. Lindy Ruff could be the right coach for the job. Some people, pessimistic people out there, might say, well, it's a nostalgia, a little pull on the heartstrings of the Buffalo sports fan. But Lindy Ruff's kind of maybe his legacy to some extent might be on the line. Some of these young players who just got to be better. I just feel like there's a lot of pressure on this team to make the playoffs. Now, if they make the playoffs and they get swept in the first round by the Bruins,
I don't think anybody cares.
Right.
I mean, they'll be upset because
in the moment,
playoffs, like you're upset in the moment, but you're like, we got back. All right.
Yeah.
We've done it. We've got over that hill. Let's go ahead. Let's move. It'll be like a couple of years ago. They finish a point out of the playoffs, and you're like, all right, we were right there. Let's build on that. Let's get over the hump and let's get in there. Didn't happen.
Right.
And things changed. And the coach gets fired. And, some of the philosophies get altered a little bit. I think if you make the playoffs and you get swept by Boston or Florida, Toronto would not be great. But
no, not Toronto.
I don't think that would sit too well. But if it's somebody like a Boston or Florida or even a Tampa, you're just like, well, we got back. That's fine. But if you play Toronto, you better go to 7. Better at least go to 7. And if you can beat them, then the Leafs will never live it down. But
I kind of like weaving in here with the Bills and Sabres a little bit. So all right, so we're talking about what teams got more pressure. What is more likely to happen as things stand today? The Sabres make the playoffs, which again, it seems easy enough, just be in the top half of the conference, or the Bills. I don't want to say they win the Super Bowl or even that they get to the Super Bowl, because that could be, there's only 2 teams that are going to do that out of 32.
Yeah.
Let's say the Bills get to the AFC title game, the final 2 within the conference. What do you feel like one is significantly more likely to happen than the other? I know math would definitely say the Sabres, but 13 years of training tells me that I do not trust the Buffalo Sabres.
Well, 13 years of that, and then also the fact the Eastern Conference is mean.
Sure.
And the playoff setup is not grooved towards being in the top 8. You got to be top 3 in your division or one of the better, one of the 2 best also rans outside of that. So it's a little wonkier, but I think the odds are better of Buffalo getting the AFC title game.
That's crazy.
But it's, I don't know. I know there's some folks that are really down on Buffalo. I mean, it's different with camp starters. Everybody's like hyped up like crazy. But when that offseason kicked into gear and everybody, the dumbest thing I heard from people was like, well, the Bills are kind of taking a step back here. And I'm like, no, they're not. Like you traded Diggs and you're like, well, they're kind of pulling it back. If they were actually taking a step back, Josh Allen's first conversation with Brandon Beane is, get me out of here. Because you're not hanging around. Like, if you're just kind of like, well, give it a couple years and see where we're at. No, dude. No, we got to win now.
Or I'm not waiting on that next contract. I want that third contract now.
Right.
Give it to me. Give it to me now.
So, it's tricky. I mean, like the odds say that it's probably – the odds are better that the Sabres go to the playoffs, but I don't know. The Bills are one of the 3 best teams in the AFC.
I think so. They're top 4. They're in the conversation, top 4. Yeah, I think without question. Maybe 5, but still they're in that mix. That's 40%.
Was it them? Kansas City,
Cincinnati. If Burrow stays healthy, I'm saying Houston. I'm not saying Baltimore though, and I know a lot of people are going to say that's short-sighted. Yeah. But, I would say Houston, Kansas City, Cincinnati, and Buffalo. Those are, like, if your life depended on one of those 4 teams, if you could pick 4 teams to come out of the AFC and your life depends on being right, I'm not taking Baltimore as one of my top 4 teams. Because I've seen too much of a track record of Lamar Jackson in the playoffs. And that's, I'm not – Lamar Jackson's a great quarterback. He's won 2 MVPs. And that's Hall of Fame shit right there. He's already 2-4 in the playoffs. He's got 6 touchdowns and 6 interceptions in 6 games in the playoffs.
Yeah.
And he's played some of his worst football in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So I'm not ready to put them among the top 4 teams if my life depended on it to get it right. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. The whole like gun to head, like.
Yeah, and I hate that. I hate that example, but that's what we're doing here, and that's I think what it is.
Right. Yeah. But it's, if you're doing gun to head, like who goes, what happens, what's more likely to happen? Bills AFC title game or Sabres playoffs, and
I'd have to go to Sabres. Got to play the math.
Yeah, right. Like you
Less
have to
bullets
play
in the
odds.
chamber.
Right. It only needs one, and it's pointed at my head. I got to go with the 50% odds, where maybe they can do it. I don't know,
but it doesn't feel like 50%. I can tell you that right now with the Sabres.
And I hate doing this because it's like we're not even a training camp. We're already just kind of being like, this team. Right. But like, you look at the division and like, okay, the Stanley Cup champions are there, Florida. Mm-hmm. You've got Toronto, who are still they're messy, but they're still really good. You've got Boston, we keep waiting to fall off a cliff. They never do.
They don't.
They just keep winning.
Right.
You've got Tampa Bay, who they just let their captain walk out and signed arguably the biggest free agent of the summer. Mm-hmm. And they traded one of their top defense. Like, they had a crazy offseason, and it's still kind of like, yeah, they're still pretty good.
Still Tampa.
Still really good. And then you've got like everybody else in the boat with Buffalo. You've got now let's remember teams.
Like Detroit.
You got Detroit, you got Montreal, you've got Ottawa with them. And like Detroit's scraping at it, trying to get to the playoffs. Ottawa's trying to do the same. Like those two teams are in the same spot as Buffalo, trying to get back to the playoffs. And then Montreal's like still in the rebuild, but like, what happens if they wake up? What happens if they snap out of it and jump into the party? Then it's it's like the Simpsons. It's the monkey knife fight in international waters. Like, there's no rules, just anybody goes.
Let's jump back to the Bills here for a second. I'm going to tell you what, I don't necessarily like it. Like, if I'm a Bills fan, and I am a Bills fan, you're not, I am. I want to know they're going to be good. Like, I've enjoyed the last couple of years because they've been a prohibitive favorite to get to the Super Bowl. This year, not so much, but I'm in a way enjoying it. I'm kind of enjoying what I think is like an aura of uncertainty right now with the Buffalo Bills. Like, you can go to both sides of the football, Joe. You go to the offense. Yeah, you lost Stephon Diggs, man. You lost Gabe Davis. That might be a bigger deal than people are giving credit for. It might prove to be. It might. Who knows? Does somebody step up? Are they going? Everyone eats is going to be their mantra on offense with Pat catching the ball. But you have so much possibilities there with Dalton Kincaid going in the year two. Khalil Shakir is coming on big. Curtis Samuel looks good. Keon Coleman, I can't believe from what I've seen how good he's looked in camp. Way better than I expected. Dawson Knox is still in the mix. They got weapons. James Cook was fourth in the NFL in rushing last year. So the offense has got potential, but they don't have a track record because Stephon Diggs was the man. Gabe Davis had some big games, and none of those guys who I've mentioned have had even Gabe Davis, type games to this point. Defensively, look, man, they're still good, but they got two safeties that they're missing. And by the way, offense, Mitch Morse, center, big deal. Von Miller, question mark. Milano, how's he looking? Question mark. We'll get to him in a second, but there's question marks on defense. But the same token, young players, Menard, Bedford, there's a lot of good young players. Ed Oliver looks really good at camp right now. He's a good player, period, too. So I'm uncertain right now. I could see this team going 13-4 or 12-5, and I could see this team going 9-8 right now.
I don't know about 9-8.
That might be pushing a little bit.
I mean, that's if things get really grim. I think at worst that's the worst they could be.
If reasonably healthy, I agree. If, a major injury, say Josh or something like that, season over, of course. But that aside, I'm sure you're right. That would be that's the floor right there. 9 wins is like the floor. A lot of shit is going wrong, and other key players are going down.
Right. Sure. The thing about McDermott, for all the the issues, the questions, and everything about him, I never really questioned what the defense is going to be like with him as the head coach, because I think the defense, no matter who they've got, what they're working with, and they had a ton of injuries last year, defense was still pretty good. It was still pretty good. I mean, it wasn't as good as it was the previous 2 years, but they were missing 3-4 starters, so of course they weren't. But I don't really worry about that too much. Yeah, the two safeties they've got in there being hurt right now, it's a tough look, but that'll cause you some sleepless nights. It's a little reason to worry, because any secondary injuries now in the NFL is like, oh boy. I mean, you gotta stock up on D-backs like NHL teams have to stock up on defensemen. You need to be ready for mayhem and be ready to fill holes, because guys are gonna get banged up, guys are gonna get hurt. Not usually for the entire season. some of the Bills guys have been in the past, but I don't really sweat the defense too much. I think the offense I think the problem with the offense is that it gets overthought. Like they're trying to do too many things. You have one of the 3 best quarterbacks in the NFL, arguably. Like, you know,
arguably to me.
Arguably because people like to argue. It's not
fair.
In actuality. Yes, he's one of the top 3 quarterbacks.
Very fair. Good point.
But it's trying to like be too smart about what they're doing. Like, you know, for a couple of years, McDermott's like, well, we got to run the ball more. Okay, but like, you have a rocket arm quarterback, man, and you've got, you know, you have at least two receivers that like can go get the ball for you. Like, figure it out, and then, you know, kind of watering down the playbook a little bit with like lots of like these dink and dunk passes, and then you're trying to run too many times, and then you're just trying to do all this stuff and trying to like. It's like it's a coach trying to force a system at a group of guys where it's just kind of like, no, man, just draw a play up in the dirt and figure it out. You know, tell the lineman where to go, and like we'll go from there. But I think as long and you know, listen, I get the fretting about, you know, Allen just, you know, picking up and running all the time. Guys got to get killed doing that, but like you got to let them just kind of act instinctually sometimes, just to do it. Like, I think Dayball took it a little too far because, like, on top of him being instinctual and running with it when, you know, he didn't see anything open, he was calling runs too.
I was
like, all right, man, just chill with that. Like, if he's got to run, he'll run. Like, you don't have to force it.
Saw kind of a decent amount of that with Brady near the end of last season too. More and more, especially as the season wore on near the end. So yesterday, Joe, I had on again, I was at Sunny Red yesterday, and I had Joe Marino on with me. Which, by the way, real quick, I got a shout out. I told you this beforehand, man. This guy, Joe Marino from Locked On Bills, I had many football players and mainstream media people there, popular people. I've never seen anything like I did last night at Sunny Red. There was 30, 40 people who came to that bar literally just to see him, hang out with him, get a photo. Somebody gave him this really cool wood-crafted Bills logo gift. This shit was just wild, man. But anyway, that was fun. I was talking to Joe, and I asked him about camp, and I said, all right, so, you know, some of the things you're looking for so far, because he's in Buffalo, in town all week. He lives in North Carolina. Like, what do you like the most? Like, what are you seeing? I was expecting him to give some, you know, really nuanced, layered, detailed answer. And you know what he said? Stop overthinking shit. Josh Allen. Josh Allen has looked incredible. I was at camp on Monday. I noticed it too. Slinging the ball all over the place, man. And he looks accurate. He looks confident. He is spinning the ball. He's throwing a good, granted, it's practice. I know that.
Right.
But I've been to practices before, previous years.
I mean,
he's never looked as good.
He's not throwing it into the tents like for the fan, like EJ back in the day. Like,
no, it's funny.
Okay.
He did have like a 20, you know, a typical. I'll say typical. Yeah, well, I'll say typical because Josh has those moments, those brain farts. He threw like 3 interceptions and 5 passes.
Right.
I think the second or third day camp. But that aside, he has been damn near perfect. He's been accurate, looks the part. And I thought with maybe all these new pieces that it would like maybe take some time in the camp. The defense would look really good early on. But Josh Allen looks like he's having the best camp of his career. And that everybody is saying that who's been out there, the people who cover the team. I think he's playing this year with something to prove. You're not going to get him to say with Stephon Diggs gone, you know, but I know he hears the noise that there's a lot of people who might think Stephon made Josh as much or more than Josh made Stephon. I've heard plenty of that, whether it's that or he just needs to be a better leader or he's hungry to get over the hump because he's going into year 7. He knows he's 28 years old, but that's not 22 in the NFL anymore. Right. Like he's actually got a chip on his shoulder this year. I don't know what it is, but my long-winded point here is your boy is looking incredible right now at camp, and that's big.
Yeah, no, it's you want to be in the right mindset getting out of camp.
Yeah,
you know, especially because preseason, like he's not going to play. He's going to play like what 1 half total in 3 preseason games, like
maybe.
You know, maybe. So like you got to be. Practices have to be where you get it all figured out and like test everything that you want to test. Try, you know, he throws 3 picks in 5 plays. It's like, okay, well, maybe he's trying something out that maybe he's not going to do in a game, but he wants to see if maybe he can get away with it in camp.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the time to do it. See if you can do it, man. But yeah, no, figure your stuff out in camp. be ready for game one. And well, I mean, I guess be ready for game one. Sometimes game one's a throwaway game. Nowadays,
100%.
But like you lose to Pittsburgh, on the first week, you're like, okay, right, sure. But yeah, no, it's good. It's good to go into the season having a positive mindset and being ready.
Let me interrupt this insightful Bills conversation. I got a comment from the Peanut Gallery here watching this on the video side. TS wants to know Sunny Reds or Imperial for pizza. I'm going to give you an honest take. And this is an honest take, and I'm a huge fan of both places. Are they listening? Are they listening here at Imperial? Sunny Reds is the best wings. Imperial has the best pizza.
Okay.
So if you can find a way to get both. Now, do I like Sunny Reds pizza? I love Sunny Reds pizza. Do I like Imperial wings? I love Imperial wings. But the wings are better at Sunny Reds, and the pizza's better here at Imperial. Telling you.
I still have to have Sunny Reds wings. I haven't been.
Oh, come on, man.
Well, the one time I went there, closed.
Oh, that's right. They were closed. And then you ended up
closed.
here of all places. See,
Yep.
I remember that. It was a Sunday, and Sunny Reds was closed, and then you came to Imperial. And that's where you had your Jamaican jerk wings that you really liked. I remember you.
I remember DMing you and being like, what's going on?
Yeah, I do. I remember that. That is funny. All right. So when it comes to that's the offense, man, I just feel like Josh Allen is primed. I feel good about that. The defense to me is a little more health predicated than anything. Von Miller, all right. So Josh Allen's the big takeaway, but you can make a case to me from what I've seen and from what I've heard that Von Miller looks 100% again. Like he's moving fast. He's got bend in his pass rush. They had a 3rd and long practice on Tuesday, which is geared towards the defensive line. They should have the opportunity because they're rushing. They're pinning their ears back. They're going after the quarterback. He looked explosive. Like he was getting around the edge. He looked great. I think him being healthy, he might not be a guy who's going to get you 15 sacks anymore, but if he could give you Leonard Floyd type production, situational pass rusher this year, that'd be fantastic. Matt Milano, slow to start camp, but all reports, Sal Capaccio talked about it today. He's looking better every day. They need that. They need Matt Milano at 100%. They need Von Miller giving them something a lot more than what he gave them last year, and they need Daquan Jones to hold up and be healthy for 17 games. So, and that, and of course, the safety position, which is already turning into a mess early in camp, but at least those injuries aren't like, 3-4 month injuries. They're week to week, and from what I hear, they're just going to be a couple weeks, and they should be okay. But the defense feels like, to your point, I trust Sean McDermott with the defense, but it's got to be healthy. So it's predicated on guys who have had some issues staying healthy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Miller, like I'm kind of over him a little bit right now, just because it's so much talk. It's so much talk, and it's like, all right, man, like sick of the talk. Just show everybody what you're about. Like just go out and get it done and take care of business. But you're right. If he can do what they were able to do last year with Floyd. Yeah.
Yep.
Geez. Again, Bills watcher, not fan. I don't have all the
I
names.
like that though. I told you that. I say it
said.
every time.
But if he can provide that kind of help, like that's huge. Would it be great to have the Von Miller, who's the Pro Bowler and sack monster? Yeah, of course. But they're going to need that pass rush. Every team needs to have a pass rush that can get to the quarterback, or at least force quarterbacks to make mistakes. If they don't have that going on consistently, then it's way more pressure on the secondary.
Yeah. Another comment or two, and I like this one. Eye of the moment. He says he's talking about Vaughn here. He just needs 3 or 4 sacks in the playoffs, and we can win a Super Bowl. Tell you what, it's a good point. I just sat here and said, I hope he can give him Leonard Floyd production. Can I walk that back already? I really don't give a shit what he does in the regular season. He can go get 4 or 5 sacks. I mean, 3 or 4 is a little bit on the light side, but 5, 6 sacks will make them matter. And then in the playoffs, when you're playing the Kansas City Chiefs for what seems like the 100th year in a row, and nobody on your defense, everyone's helpless to stop at Mahomes when it matters, which has happened the last couple of years in the playoffs. Von Miller could be that guy in the fourth quarter when the Bills are protecting a 6-point lead, get a strip sack on Pat Mahomes and win a game. That's why you gave him $100 million for 6 years or 3 or 4 years, whatever the way the contract's going to end up ultimately working. That's why you gave that guy that kind of money.
Yeah.
So that's what they need from Von Miller. They need Von Miller to be big in the biggest moments.
Yeah, because they haven't had somebody.
No,
like not on the front 7. Nobody runs 3-4-3 anymore, really. But like that front line attack, they haven't had anybody really step up in those spots, in those moments, to be the force
Sure.
that they've needed. Like, you get Hyde, you had Hyde and Poyer being big, you had Trey being huge. Like, that's great, that's good, but like, don't have to put the stress on those guys. If you get to the quarterback, those guys don't have to worry too much.
Let me give you my take that you've heard before. Now, again, you're not on the show much anymore, and usually it's hockey when we're talking, of course. But this should be a familiar Bills take for you here. My biggest problem with the Buffalo Bills is too many star players do not play like star players in the playoffs. It's the Bills' playoff plan seems to be year after year, hey, Josh Allen, go tear it up and be Hall of Fame caliber, because that's the only way you're going to win. You go back to last year's game against the Chiefs. And this is a great example of what I'm talking about. Mahomes and Allen, let's say they played to a draw. They both played more than well enough for their team to win. Neither was perfect, but they made enough plays for their team to win the game. Why did the Chiefs win the game? I'll tell you why. Because Travis Kelce, and I'm getting into complimentary stars, we'll call them, secondary stars, whatever you want to call them. After the quarterbacks, Travis Kelce, who really didn't do much of shit for the last 7-8 weeks of the season. I don't even think he had a touchdown catch. He became Travis Kelce in the playoffs again. Chris Jones, same deal. He made a big monster play. He got in Josh Allen's face, forced a short hop. You know what throw I'm talking about there. I think it was a Shakir. It would have been probably a touchdown. Those guys step up. What do you get from, and well, he's gone now, but like Stephon Diggs, he face plants in the playoffs and elimination losses. He did it 3 straight years. Ed Oliver. This is why every year I hear how great Ed Oliver is. And he looks really, really good in stretches during the season. And then he disappears in the playoffs. 2 straight years. And I've watched this film, I promise you, 3-4 times. The Bengals playoff loss and the Chiefs playoff loss the last 2 years. Ed Oliver gave them nothing. Ed Oliver gave the Bills about as much as you and I did in the playoffs these last 2 years. That's in elimination games. I'm sorry. And I know that sounds like, really idiotic take, but it's not inaccurate. He has done nothing in the playoffs. This is a Pro Bowl caliber player. Where is the Pro Bowl caliber play when it matters? The Bills are too reliant on Josh Allen to be huge in the playoffs. The other star players have to step up, and they have not done that. That's what's kept the Bills out of a Super Bowl, I believe. And Sean McDermott in 2021, because that was just disgusting.
The kind of
I miss ranting
terrible.
With you. It's like a license to rant when I got Joe Yerdon on the show. I love it.
I'm about to bring in a hockey comparison here a little bit. It's a little different just because the guy I'm going to reference is the best player in the NHL, but it's a little like Connor McDavid, what it's been with the Oilers the last few years, where it's like, all right, Connor, go win us the games. Like, you don't have much of a supporting cast here. Like, you got a top 5 winger here, Leon, but go win it for us. And he almost did it this year. Almost. Very, very close, as close as you can get to without doing it. He did it this year, but that can't be the only plan of attack. That can't be the only thing. You're just saying well, we've got the top guy, go win it. Allen, again, an elite player in the NFL, can win those games by himself. But if he's going up against Mahomes, and Mahomes has some of those complementary guys with him, and some of those guys that do step up on the big moments. Even Cincinnati, you're the loser to Cincinnati. All their guys stepped up big, and they stepped up big again the following week against Kansas City to go to the Super Bowl. You need that help. He can take care of everything else for you, but asking him to go and win the whole damn game by himself when he's only playing one side of the ball, so he can only do so much there. Everybody else has got to do something. Everybody else has to step up and help somebody. Not everybody. If everybody else does, then they got nothing to worry about. But get 1, 2, 3 guys that make a big play in a big moment, come up with a big catch, make a big run, whatever it is, just go friggin' do it. Otherwise, it's wow, he's really great. Too bad he can't win it.
We are here live at Imperial Pizza. I am with Joe Yerdon. All right, so one cool thing about you, too, is you might be the one person I know that actually hates Aaron Rodgers as much or maybe even more than I do. I despise Aaron Rodgers. God, I hate that dude, man. He is such a piece of shit.
I'm a hipster.
I'm not even trying to stir. I'd say that if he played for the Vikings, I don't give it's not the AFC East.
Yeah.
I just think he's a horrible piece of shit.
I'm a hipster on hating him because I've hated them since forever.
You have.
For anybody who doesn't know, I'm a Detroit Lions fan. So,
Big.
So like half of anytime you see a giant, Aaron Rodgers, great quarterback highlight reel, half that stuff is against the Lions, and it's like just beat somebody else, please. Jesus, dude, like quit getting fat numbers off a bad team. But Rodgers, take a hike.
Are you surprised that the Jets, by so many people are, and they had the Jets really high on their power rankings? And one of when I said we had a podcast within the podcast when we were eating our wings here, is you said that there's a lot of outlets and people who you think they like to rank the Bills lower in things because it draws engagement and it draws reaction and stuff like that.
Bills Mafia out in force to be like, you're stupid.
Yeah, for sure.
Wrong when they're doing that.
I saw the FanDuel NFL power rankings, which again, it's July, and come on, but it's something to talk about in July. So, well, now we're actually in August, but the Jets were 6th on FanDuel. The Bills were 12th. And the Houston Texans were 13. I'm like, what am I missing when it comes to the Jets? Look, the Jets got great players. They got a good defense. They got a couple of elite skill position players. But just like the Bills with Josh Allen, their success ultimately is going to rely on Aaron Rodgers, who is 40, going on 41 years old, coming off a major injury, who was not that great at Green Bay before he came to the Jets to begin with the year before, who's a douchebag and a finger pointer who will point the finger at his teammates if they start playing bad early.
Everybody under the bus.
And they got a lame duck head coach who, if they start shitty, Saleh might get fired right off the bat. It's like, why are the Jets such a popular pick? Maybe it's because they haven't been in them. Which, by the way, the New York Jets and the Buffalo Sabres, the longest drought in major professional sports. But are you a little taken back that the Jets are ranked by most as high as they are right now?
That's crazy. I maybe it's just Roger. It's got to be Rodgers hype. I mean, like, the defense is good. I mean,
sure.
I can't bag on that. The defense is pretty good, but like, I look at their offense and I'm like, I don't even if it was like, a random quarterback who's good in that spot as opposed to Rodgers, where I'm just kind of like blind with hatred. But if it's just like some other quarterback, what parts of their offense, like Breece Hall's good.
Garrett Wilson's
good, but like,
the offensive line shaky. They got 2 old new tackles. Mike Williams is a big question mark at receiver. This is not a team without questions.
Yeah,
they're a team that's talented, especially on defense. Give me the Jets defense and Josh Allen. Woo, I'm gonna take that all day.
It's big difference.
And the Jets, and I know. And the Jets, to their credit, man, they have played the Bills tough in recent years, and Zach Wilson has played well against the Bills. You know what I mean? Even when the Jets suck, they always play the Bills tough. That just took me back a little bit. And then there's a lot of people, I know the betting odds right now are pretty much even money between the 3 teams, with Miami being right there as well. And you want to talk about...
I understand Miami way more than I do the Jets.
I do too.
Jets are the Jets, man. Like, Jets keep doing dumb stuff.
Sometimes
teams that are always the way they are, you can bank on them just continuing to be that way.
I want to do my best to not sound like a homer and remain objective here in my talk. I'm doing my best. I'm trying here. I'm not that high on the Jets. I'm higher on Miami than I am the Jets. Like, if I'm not a Bills fan and I'm looking, and again, I hate saying the phrase "gun to your head," pick your division, but I feel like it's the only way you can be truthful. I still like the Bills to win a division, but I like Miami more than I like the Jets because that offense is so fast, man. Holy shit, are they fast? And they go draft more fast people, but they better win now.
Yeah.
Because that contract, and good for Tua. You know what I mean? Good for him. Leverage, right place, right time. He's played good enough that I know Miami didn't want to give him that much money, but you can't let him go. You can't start over either at this point. So Tua got to hand him by the ball, so to speak, a little bit. He got paid. Tyreek Hill's you got to pay Tyreek Hill because Tua ain't shit without Tyreek Hill. I know they got Jalen Waddle, and he's great too.
They gave him a ton of money too.
Yeah, man. So you're talking your quarterback and 2 receivers taking up so much money. That's going to come back to get them. The Bills just had to go through an offseason of making tough decisions based on the salary cap. That's going to get Miami at some point. I also don't
think, right? You'd think it will.
Sure. Well, now I do believe the salary cap is real. Well, at least I'm as close to believing that it's real than I've ever been, because I've always thought it was, bullshit myth. But you're kind of seeing some teams have to make tough decisions. But here's the thing with Miami. In the last couple of years, they look like world beaters. Like when they play a team that they're better than, they're unstoppable. Like they'll put up 50 on you. They put up 70 on Denver. Yeah. They look so
Bills
good.
Humbled them immediately.
The Bills beat the shit out of them the very next week, of course. But the thing with Miami is they look good in the early season. They look good against the teams that they're better than. They rough shot on them. But at the end of the season, when things get tight, they get tight.
Yeah.
And they got, I don't have it in front of me. I know they got a murderer's row of football games coming up. Their last 6 games. I remember talking about it many times. I said, if the Bills and Miami are even going into the last 6 weeks, Miami's in big, big trouble. Like they need to have like a 2-game lead. I know they played the Jets twice. They play at Frisco. They got at Houston. Their last 6 games are hard.
They had a lead last year and it didn't matter.
Exactly. And this schedule is going to be really difficult. And the other thing about Miami, you've seen it firsthand with the Bills over the last couple of years. Star players coming back, but not really effective that first year. Trey White, he looked kind of like shit his first year.
Yeah.
Great guy, worked his ass off.
Tough injury for
exactly. That's nothing against Trey White. No, there's not a harder worker and a more likable person in that locker room when he was here. But my point was he wasn't good when he came back. The second year, when he got hurt again, that first month, he was spectacular. But that first year, Von Miller last year, he was an absolute shell of himself. He had no business even being on the field in hindsight.
Yep.
Well, Miami's got 2 elite pass rushers in Phillips and Bradley Chubb that are coming off, one in Achilles and one in ACL.
Yep.
You need those guys. If you're Miami, you're like, I need these guys to be really good.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what you can count on that this season whenever they come back.
Plus, like one of their best linemen was like hurt every 2 weeks. Like he kept getting hurt in every game.
Yeah.
He got hurt again. He got hurt in the Bills game here.
Yeah.
And like the whole season, he was just fighting it all year long. And it was like, well, he's your best guy. And then eventually at some point they had to be like, all right, man, you gotta sit for a couple weeks here because this is too much. Like somebody else has got to step up here. And Miami wasn't able to really, I mean, it didn't help. They didn't have anybody else to go with him to help protect Tua or any of that. But like, when your best guy keeps getting banged up, like, what are you gonna do? And Miami. I mean, listen, it's easy to be really down on Miami because they're always slamming their hand in the car door when it comes to this stuff. They're just always just like, oh, well, screwed up again. Like just some dumb stuff happens or they just play stupid. Like the whole end of last year was, I hope that was humbling for the head coach because it's a lot of like blind, like, no, everything's fine. No, we're good.
Blind
and
arrogance.
It's like, well, you blew the division. No, it's all right. We'll just win in the playoff. Like, you didn't win in the playoff. Well, hey, we'll get them next year. Okay, dude. Like, all right, man. Like, I mean, at some point it's going to be like, well, I'll get them in my next job. Like that's what it turns into. But they are scary. Like that. Like the weapons they have are scary. But I don't know. They can never put it together.
Yeah, and you got to play well late in the season. You're going to have to go on the road in cold weather. Not in Buffalo, because they're not going to be in Buffalo in cold weather. Well, actually, they're here in early November. In Buffalo, you never know.
Yeah.
That might be cold-ass weather in early November. But, yeah, no disrespect to them, or at least not intentional disrespect. But when I think of the AFC, I don't think as much about Miami and the Jets. I'm constantly thinking about Kansas City, and I'm worried about Cincinnati if Burrow stays healthy, just because they have dominated the Buffalo Bills. Let's keep shit real here. The last 2.5 times they played them, they've won, and forget about the scores. Like, they've dominated the game. They've dominated both sides, the line of scrimmage, everything. So Joe Burrow
in either of those games.
No. The game was never in doubt. I mean, the score might have looked close, but the game was never in doubt. And honestly, if DeMar Hamlin doesn't go down, I feel like the Bills are getting blown. They were primed to get ready to get blown out that game. They had no answer for Joe Burrow in that offense, and we saw it a handful of weeks later in the playoffs. So, I mean, I got some, I don't want to say evidence, but you got an inclination that's how it was going to go down. By the way here, dude. All right, so at Imperial here, and if you're watching this on the video side, I don't drink beer when I'm doing a podcast ever.
Right.
And here's the reason. I burp so easy. And like if I have 3-4 sips of beer, I tend to struggle with burping. So I don't like doing that. But there's this beer. It's Mango Cart Wheat Ale. It might be my new favorite beer. Mm-hmm. It is incredible. And I'm willing to take that chance right now that I don't burp on the show with Joe Yerdon here live at Imperial Pizza. But before we talk a little bit of Sabres, let's at least mention your squad. We'll mention your squad,
Okay.
man. The Detroit Lions, I like them. They are stacked. Weapons galore. Gibbs, St. Brown, Laporta, Jameson Williams, and really good players on defense. Obviously, Hutch. I love Brian Branch. I think he's going to be a star player.
Branch is very good.
Jack Campbell will come on as a linebacker. They got a lot of good players on that team. Stat team.
Hutchinson. You didn't even mention Hutchinson.
He's just the best player. Oh, and they got a great offensive line. I mean, they got one of the best offensive lines in football. So they're primed for, like, first of all, as a Detroit Lions fan, I know you well enough through the years that you are ultimately so cautious with getting high on your own supply when it comes to the Detroit Lions. I know that's a phrase you've
never
said
had a
plenty.
reason to get high on them.
That's true.
Supply, so.
But you do now. They are really good, and that is shaping up. That NFC North, Detroit and Green Bay, is shaping up to be one hell of a battle because Green Bay's got a good team and a great quarterback who just got the biggest contract in NFL history. He's one season in as a starter. You want to talk about the right place, right time, but you could just tell he's popping, man. He's a great player. But anyway, that rivalry, and I know it's a big rivalry, man. Detroit, Green Bay, you're going to get, for the next couple of years at least, some really good new installments of a great rivalry because those are the two teams, the class of the NFC North, they're going to be battling it out.
You know, my reaction is when it comes to the Packers is, you remember the movie Face Off?
With Nicolas Cage?
Nicolas Cage and John Travolta.
Yeah.
And I think it's Travolta who says it, where he's screaming at Nicolas Cage. I forget if he's got his, like, the faces swap, whatever the deal is. But he just screams. He's like, "Why don't you just die?"
That's how you feel about the Packers?
That's me with the Packers. I'm convinced they gave Love all that money because most of it was a ransom for having to deal with all Aaron Rodgers bullshit for years when they drafted him and then made him sit behind him for all those years because they did the same thing to Rodgers and Favre. And it's just like, how does this keep working? How does this keep, like, it's different coaches. Like, I mean, it's different coaches that did the same damn thing with them. But how does it keep working? How does it keep happening? And like, and this isn't a pessimist. This isn't me being a pessimist about this prediction I'm about to make. Lions are not winning the division because they have an evil first place schedule. Like, they're playing the Bills, they're playing the Niners, they're playing the Eagles, they're playing all of these the other top teams in the NFL. And the Packers got to play all the other second place teams. And it's like,
it is an advantage. Well,
right.
It's an advantage now.
Right. I mean, everything changes once the season starts.
You know, teams come out of nowhere, teams go down, teams go up. But you're right to your point.
Are we looking at the Bills being bad? No. Are the Eagles? Well, the Eagles are sketchy, but like, they're still good.
Yeah, they're good.
San Francisco is incredible. Like, you know, like, you're dealing with all these teams where it's just like, Jesus. I mean, they're playing Tampa Bay again. Tampa. I mean, they beat Tampa in the playoffs. Tampa Bay played pretty damn hard. They're not bad. Like,
no.
The NFC South is a horrible division, just like the AFC South is. But like, Tampa's not that bad. I mean, right now on paper, Baker might turn into a pumpkin again, and then they're dog crap.
Sure. Do you optimistically but realistically think the Lions have what it takes to get to a Super Bowl? I do.
Yeah. No, they do.
I do. I think they have what it takes. I think they could have did. What am I talking about? They should have did it last year.
Should have. Well,
that still haunts you a little bit. How much does that haunt you? Don't haunt you at all?
No, I had this
that
discussion.
Would haunt me.
I had this discussion the other night with a few other, like, Buffalo blog sports types, and they were like, "Doesn't that bother you?" And they go, "No." And they're like, "Well," from their Bills fan perspective, they're like, "Well, give it a few years, maybe it'll haunt you." And I'm like, "No, it really won't, because I did this before in 1990." You know, where it was like, oh, Lions on the rise. Barry Sanders, best running back. Oh, they got this, you know, silver streak offense. They can play. They got some good guys. Here we got back. Yeah. You know, and they kept, you know, Wayne Fonts did whatever, and then they got up their own ass about head coaches, and, you know, Bobby Ross comes in and he's like, "We're gonna run the Army offense from 1935."
So that sounds like that eats away at you a lot more than this past season.
Now, like, the loss didn't bother me because Washington that year was nasty. Like, they lose to them in the NFC title game in Washington. It's like, well, what are you gonna do? You know, Rippon was great. Ricky Sanders was like their third receiver, and he was great all playoffs. Like,
one game away though. Bills Lions Super Bowl, man.
almost happened, and the
Almost
Bills
happened.
would
Wish it would have
beat the
happened.
tar out of them too.
Well, shit, Washington beat the tar out of the Bills in that Super Bowl. I think it was 38-24. It wasn't even that close.
Well, Detroit would have been playing like that, because they had a run and shoot style offense. Silver Streak was basically run and shoot.
Mm-hmm.
And like they ran Barry a lot, but like they would have been giving the ball back to the Bills all the time. And the Bills were run all over Detroit's defense. Like that would not have been close. That would not have been a close Super Bowl. It would have been cool for the Lions to finally get to one or whatever, but the Bills would have beat them by 25.
Well, it would have been nice. And by the way, it's worth noting too. If you're listening to this, you wouldn't see it. Joe's got a Barry Sanders college Oklahoma State jersey on right now. Barry Sanders.
Hoping Thurman Thomas would have just been like magically hanging out here. Like, the hell? What do you got that on for?
People ask all the time, who's your favorite NFL player ever? Mine is Barry Sanders. Barry Sanders is my favorite player ever. He was one of those guys. I wasn't a Lions fan, and they weren't, to your point, very good for a lot of his career. But if they were on TV, I watched it because every single time he touched the ball.
Thanksgiving, you got to watch him.
Yeah. You felt like something magical could happen every single time he touched the ball.
That's why it was crazy when Bobby Ross, or I think it was Bobby Ross, who, when they signed Tommy Vardell to be the fullback, to carry the ball inside the 5 to get the touchdowns. Because they were like, well, Barry loses.
Touchdown Tommy.
Barry loses too many yards in close. And I'm like, he'll get him back.
Yeah, that's great. Let him lose 3 yards. Yeah, who gives a shit?
The guy scored 40 touchdowns in college, man. Like, shut up.
One of the most ironic things to me about the Lions has always been their 2 greatest players of all time just abruptly. They retired when they still had a lot of juice
football.
left.
Quit football.
Yeah.
And then the team fought them over bonus money for the next, 5 years.
That's funny. You know what's
you say funny? I say
well,
it's
not
a
funny
tragedy upon football humanity.
Well, I take pleasure in other fans' miseries for their football teams because I've went through enough of
the
it.
Lions give you dump trucks full.
You know what's funny too is when you talk about like Green Bay, you always get that sense Green Bay's always going to win. They're never going to be Green Bay. Yada yada yada. That's how if you're an older Bills fan, if you're old, like my age, and you grew up. Well, I didn't grow up in the 70s. I was a little kid in the 70s, but that whole fucking decade. Miami literally won the decade against the Bills. Now, I know New England dominated during the Brady era. At least the Bills squeaked out 3 wins during the Tom Brady run, somehow, some way. Actually, I think only twice. No, I think one of them he didn't even play in. My point is this. The Bills went an entire decade without being the Miami Dolphins. And that's your rival. Like, that's the team that you want to beat every single year.
I mean, they got them back in the 90s.
Oh, yeah, for sure, man. And it made it that much sweeter because of the 70s. In fact, when the Bills beat Miami, I think it was in 1980, they literally tore the goalposts down at the stadium.
I don't blame them. Those Dolphins teams were ridiculous then.
Yeah.
That's a big win. But.
So we'll be kicking in the Bill stuff. So before we get out of here, I actually want to talk a couple minutes worth of Sabres, which I know is a lot of Bills fans are like, all right, peace out, boys. Good job tonight. Like the show.
They're like, yeah, it is late night. Late night
now we're doing the real Yerdon After Dark here, folks. Talk a little bit of Sabres. I just want to get your thoughts on a few things. I'm sure we'll talk plenty more before the actual season starts, but I was a little, I don't want to say surprised, kind of almost fascinated by the UPL deal and actually how much I actually liked it, the 5-year deal.
Yeah.
I had a sense that I would not like a long-term deal because I'm thinking of Devin Levi. Well, you look at that contract, and I feel like the possibilities are endless with the UPL. If he's plays like he did last year, I think it's a bargain. I think he's like the 21st highest paid goalie right now. So if he plays great, awesome.
Yeah.
If Devin Levi emerges, that is a reasonable enough contract that you could either A, keep him and play him 30 games a year down the road, or B, you could trade him. It's a tradable contract for a player who's good. I mean, the one downside would be if he went back to sucking or gets hurt all the time. But, like, you got to feel the same way when it comes to that contract. Like, it doesn't prohibit anything with the Sabres goaltending situation. Or do I got that wrong?
No, it doesn't prohibit anything. And, also the team's pretty well under the salary cap. And they don't really have to sweat these things out so much. But the deal's really good. I know some people looked at it in 5 years. Like, really, 5 years? What the hell's that about? And I'm like, well, I look at it kind of from UPL's perspective where, they worked with him and like really slow played him pretty hard. When he comes out of Sudbury and, that first year, granted, there was, I think, was it the COVID year? was it the uniform? Either way, but like they start him off in the ECHL. He's playing with Cincinnati, and then he comes up and he's playing some Rochester time there, and it's like, okay, well, he's doing all that, and then the COVID shortened season after, when everybody came back in January, and he was supposed to be in Rochester all season, and then every goalie in Buffalo got hurt, and then they're like, all right, man, you got to come up, and then he got hurt here, and then just that blew up that whole season. And then 2 years ago, he's in Rochester, and like Amerks gets the playoffs. He gets hurt in the last game of the season. He gets run through by Buffalo guy Ryan Schmelzer playing for Utica. It's run over. UPL's knocked out for the rest of the playoffs. Doesn't get to play, and it's like, well, that was the chance to see, like, let's see what he does in a big moment here. Like, it's a good team. Let's see what goes on there, and kind of cost him. And then, everything that's happened the last couple of years, carrying 3 goalies, and trying to figure it out. Like, no goalies played well 2 seasons ago. All 3 of them bad. Right. And then Levi shows up, and it's like, oh crap. The thing with Levi, though, like, Levi provides the pressure, and like that was a motivation factor for UPL, without a doubt. Like, he could play nice about it if he wants to, but there's no doubt Levi getting those like 7 of the last 8 games of the season, getting them back into the playoff picture, and like maybe they go. That changed everybody's head around to be like, all right, screw this. Like, we're coming back hard next year. Yeah,
UPL was a healthy scratch opening game, wasn't he, in the season?
I think he played any of the first 6 games. I think. Like, right. Levi played like the first 4, got hurt, and then Comrie played the next one, and then maybe the one after. It was a long season.
It seems like an eternity ago.
But that's what made a lot of the talk at the end of the season saying, I'm doing Don Cherry stuff here with my hands, like playing the piano. but that made a lot of the stuff with Adam saying, like, we've always believed in it and we always done that. It's like, well, yes and no. Like, I don't know. And like, UPL, he had the arbitration rights. He said, all right, let's do that. Like, because arbitration things, like, people say, like, well, they're going to fight about this. It's like, no, they just want to get a contract done. Like, that's the main thing with arbitration. It sets a date. No matter what, by that date, you're going to have a contract, whether it's from a hearing or the team signs you, like, whatever. But you got it done. But anytime you go to arbitration, like, it's your players' rights, but like sometimes it doesn't always sit right with the team because they're just like, oh, come on, you don't trust us to get a deal done?
Right.
Like,
get a little personal.
It's that sort of thing. Now, thankfully, it didn't go to a hearing, so like that kind of parks that, because if you go to a hearing, your future with the team is probably not very long. Right. Evan Rodriguez did it a few years ago, and he was out the door. I think that like later that season. It's happened. Tim Kennedy won his arbitration case against the Sabres, and then they walked away from it. They were just like, forget this, buddy, get out of here.
They don't like that shit in Imperial Pizza, by the way.
I know,
somewhere there's a Kennedy jersey somewhere here in this pizzeria in South Buffalo, but
it's like that kind of thing. So I think, and I don't know, I certainly don't know this for a fact, but I do wonder if maybe that negotiation was a little bit punchier, like to get maybe he had a monetary number in mind. He's like, all right, well, let's do it for this, and they're like, well, the cap hit might be pretty high. It's like, okay, 5 years then. And then you get paid, but like you get security out of it. So I think security was the bigger part of that for him, because as opposed to like walk him, this is going to walk him into free agency anyways, but like if he signed for 2-3 years, that would have done it anyways. This buys a couple of those, I think buys a couple of the years, but like cool.
Yeah.
But like he gets the peace of mind of being like, well, now I got 5 years. If it's not here, it's going to be somewhere else, and I'll be playing there. But I got 5 years out of this, as opposed to like,
good
and
for
he
him.
knows full well Levi. If Levi's not his backup this season, he won't be very long. It won't be too much longer into the future when he is.
Right.
And then you're talking about like a Ullmark Swayman thing they did in Boston, where both guys are going to play 41 games.
Right.
And then it's a little awkward that way because, ideally you're a playoff team at that point. And then you're like, all right, who's the playoff guy? Like, how are you going to do that? Like,
things change quickly in the NHL too with goalies, don't they? I mean, Ullmark was a Vezina winner. Or I'm not a Vezina winner.
He was 2 years ago.
I got it right. He won it 2 years ago. Yeah.
Yep.
Things change.
And I mean, like him and Swayman still split the games. Which that was a big argument why maybe Ullmark should win it, but his numbers were so good that you couldn't just be like, well, he only played 41 games. Like, yeah, but his goals against was under 2. And then his save percentage was like 9-4. Like he wins. Sorry, like that's how it goes.
It felt so sabery. It did. I know bullshit to say that, and he went to a great team. I get all that.
Yeah,
It still feels Sabres.
That whole thing, looking back on it, I think it was the fact that Boston gave him 4 years. That's what flipped it, and the fact that Boston's better than Buffalo, just as far as the team goes. Like, but I know Linus enjoyed his time here, but you want to win too.
Sure,
and that's the other part of the pressure that's on them this year to wrap it up to like what we started with. Because if they botch it up again and it's an 80-point season, what guys on the roster are saying like, it's fully get me out of here. Like this is just this stuff's never getting figured out. Like if you change the GM out again and the guys are going to be like, listen, I know I signed a contract, but like, God, get me out of here, please.
I got one more Sabres question. We got a couple minutes left here at Imperial Pizza. I got one more Sabres question for you. We're going to talk again well before the season starts. We'll start talking about line combinations, and I'll get your thoughts on some of that stuff. But the big trade so far, anyway, to date, the big trade is the Sabres traded Savoie, and they got McLeod. What were your initial thoughts on that? We sort of knew that the Sabres were going to have to trade a prospect, especially when they took their first round pick, when they made another pick. I'm like, somebody's got to go. Turns out it was Savoie. For a casual Sabres fan who might not, really know much about either of the players, it feels to me like a smart trade, maybe a necessary trade for the Sabres to get a guy who's like going to be your pretty solid third line center. There's not many mysteries, not Payton Krebs. You know what you're getting with Ryan McLeod, right? Yeah, no, you do. You know you're getting a shutdown type guy who skates very fast. He's a very fast skater. Great on the forecheck. We saw during the Oilers Stanley Cup final run how good he was at frustrating Florida. And Florida was excellent at frustrating Edmonton. McLeod was doing a damn good job of doing this, like turning the tables on the Panthers as well. He's really good for what they want to do. Lindy wants to attack everything with speed, full pressure on the forecheck, the whole thing. Like, go back. I mean, you're not going to go back and watch, but like watch any of the Devils games from the 22-23 season and watch how they play. Like, go back and watch them play the Sabres. Every game against the Devils, like, Sabres going to lose this game by 9 goals because like these guys are terrifying. Yeah. So like he fits a lot more of what they want to do. Giving up Savoie, and like this trade got panned on Twitter. Everybody's like, oh, same old Sabres, here we go, giving up, losing the trade right away. And I'm like, well, I mean, yeah, on paper it looks awful. Like he was the number 9 pick, 2021, 22? It was 22. Oh. He was the number 9th overall pick in 2022. Yeah. High, best offensive prospect in the system, blah, 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 all that. Well, they drafted Benson a year ago. He turned into the, it's like, okay, well, now he's the best guy. Savoie's chance was last year, and then he got hurt in the Prospects Challenge. Yeah. That totally cost him a shot at being in the NHL right away, which sucks. Because would have been really curious to see what he done. But that trade gets killed online because of the status, the whole thing. But I don't know what I don't know what that trade does for Edmonton. Like, yeah, it gives them another offensive weapon, and if things get weird for them in the future, like with Dre Zadel or McDavid, like McDavid's a free agent in a couple of years, and you're like, oh, I don't know, like what if things get really stupid there, and then guys are just like, all right, I gotta go, or whatever. That happens, that's criminal, but like they needed to rebuild their prospect pipeline. It's terrible because they've been picking low in the first round for years. So like they get a guy that is extremely good. He had a great year in junior. He should have. He was 20 years old. If you're 20 years old playing 16 and 17-year-olds, you better be scoring 2 points a game. Yeah. And the thing that stood out to me though was he wasn't the guy that because his team went to the Memorial Cup, which is the Canadian Junior Hockey League playoffs. Like it's the championship. He wasn't the main guy. There was 3 or 4 other guys that they leaned on a lot heavier throughout the entire playoffs. He put up some nice playoff numbers, but like he wasn't the main dude. And that to me was like, all right, they traded for him, they added him, and then they were like, I think we're gonna stick with the guys we already had here. And like, well, we need a goal. Well, we're gonna put these guys out here. Yeah. So he wasn't tasked with that. So that to me was a big red flag. And I was like, I wonder if he's the guy that's going to get moved this year. I didn't have the courage to say if they trade somebody, it's going to be Savoie. But
if you again going back to the old gun to the head. If you made me pick a guy, I probably would have said Savoie.
Yeah.
It's easy for me to say now because they actually
hindsight. Sure. Yeah, I get that. I want to ask you before we get out of here a question. All right. So look, you've been on the show a lot. For people who are newer to the show, Joe used to be able to be on every week. This is before, you started covering the team and, just getting a lot busier. This was during the pandemic, wasn't shit going on.
Yep.
But anyway, we used to do a fun starting 5-weekly draft every week. So that's how I know you've been on the show just during that stretch, like 55 times.
Yeah.
Probably been on the show a good 70 times, at least. Here's a question that I never asked you before.
Oh.
I never thought of this.
Okay.
And I'm going to give credit, which, by the way, on the video side, we've been over 600 live people watching for much of the show. So if you're watching us on the video side, we do appreciate you coming through here tonight. But a commenter actually asked us, I the moment. He says, but why a Yankees cap? Now, again, if you're listening to this, you don't see it. But on the video side here, so Joe's got his Oklahoma State, Detroit, you're a Lions fan. It's basically what he's saying is you're a Lions fan. Why are you not a Tigers fan? He says, where's the Tigers' love? But you got a Yankees hat on. So explain how you're a Detroit Lions fan, but you're not a Detroit Red Wings fan. You're not a Detroit Tigers fan. You're a New York Yankees fan, which I am as well, of course.
Breaking news, I am a Red Wings fan, or I was.
Okay.
The reason for that was the Adirondack Red Wings were the main farm team growing up. I grew up near
remember that.
Albany.
Yep.
And this was before the Albany River Rats came around, which, thank my lucky stars, I had the Red Wings, because if I had the River Rats, I would have probably become a Devils fan, and then I hate myself for the rest of my life. So that caused that. I'm a Lions fan because of Barry Sanders.
Fair enough.
And it's because of his time here, because I saw that Holiday Bowl game. I was a kid. I was like 10 years old. So, football games on. I'm just going to watch a football game.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm watching Barry Sanders run for like four touchdowns in the Holiday Bowl, and then like not even play the fourth quarter. Like, it was just one of the most ridiculous, dominant college football game performances I've ever seen in my life. I'm like, this guy's amazing. So you coupled that with like having like Tecmo Super Bowl on Nintendo, and then you're using Barry Sanders and you're just zigzagging everywhere, and you're just doing that. You're like, oh my God, this guy's amazing. I'm going to follow him. So I ended up following him, and then got roped in the Lions. So I'm
roped. You got roped in
by Barry Sanders to be a Lions fan. And I kidded around in the past on Twitter saying, like, I don't think I've ever added Barry Sanders. Maybe I did once, and I was like, this is your fault, Barry. You did this to me, man.
So if it wasn't for Barry Sanders, you don't become a Detroit Lions fan those years later and up until now, too. That's
probably not. Yeah. I mean, like, my dad's a Giants fan. So, and the Giants they're fine. I didn't take to them. Like, when I was a really little kid, I liked the Dolphins because the colors were cool and all that. But I didn't stick with it.
I like the Raiders for that reason.
I kind of dug the Raiders too. Plus, like, Marcus Allen and Bo Jackson were cool. So
to that commenter's point, though, no Tigers. I hated the Detroit Tigers. I've always hated the Tigers.
Yeah,
sweet ass middle of the infield though when I was a little kid with Trammell and Lou Whitaker. That was a great middle of the infield for the Detroit Tigers. But I hated them. Jack Morris, couldn't stand him. Pitcher, really good. I think of the Detroit Tigers. I think of Tom Selleck.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I think of him more than any player. Like, if you said, what do you think of first when you think of the Detroit Tigers? I think of Tom Selleck.
Mm-hmm. 100%. Yeah, no, he had the Tigers hat on every show.
Yeah.
Every episode. But yeah, no, I grew up a Yankees fan. I've been a Yankees fan since I was 3-4 years old, whatever. Like,
now that makes more sense because of where we live.
Yeah, I've been to Yankee Stadium hundreds of times. And grew up watching those teams in the 80s. Mattingly was my guy. Winfield was my guy. It was really cool. And they had Ricky Henderson, and then the boss stunk it up running the team.
I miss him though.
And I in some ways I do, because he would at least get some shit done.
Aaron Boone would not be the manager of this team. I can tell you that right now.
He would have been fired 4 years ago. Are you kidding me? But it's like, like the 90s were fun. Well, the mid to late 90s were fun because obviously, the World Series and all that. But it's like people were just like, front runner, man. And I'm like, dude, the 1990 team, which Peacock did a mini series. I don't know if you had a chance to catch this. Basically, it's like the Bronx is burning again.
No, I did not see that.
It's about
burning again.
Yeah, I think Joel Sherman wrote a book about this, but it's about the 1990 Yankees and everything that happened that year. I didn't realize that the Howie Spira case really blew up in 1990. They traded Winfield that year. Mattingly was hurt, so he hardly played. And then, it had Mel Hall. I knew this about Mel Hall later, that he had like an underage girlfriend. It's as weird saying it as it being true, but like they interviewed him and he's in prison because he's a scumbag.
Yeah.
And they were like talking to players from the team and like bringing this high school girl around like to games and like inviting the family around because the guy's a predator, a scumbag. And like they're doing the interviews and like everybody who was on the Yankees or around the Yankees at the time were just like they're asking about it. You just see the reaction like, like unbelievably bad.
Wow.
And it's crazy.
I know that.
And all of this happened in 1990, and I'm like, I wonder why they were friggin' awful. They didn't even touch anything about drafting Brian Taylor and then having his career get ruined by injuring his arm in a bar fight like years later. Like they didn't even get into any of that stuff. It was just strictly 1990 and like Howie Spira and the boss getting suspended, Stick Michael taking over, and then the whole future of the Yankees changes after that. But yeah, the Jeter draft, all that stuff like that's strung out from 90. It's crazy.
I'll have to check that out.
It's kind of short. It's like 4 episodes, but oh my God, it's insane.
The Yankees were the first team that I ever loved. I liked the Yankees before I liked the Bills. I knew the Yankees before I knew the Buffalo Bills. Father was, first of all, we lived in the Bronx about 5 minutes from the stadium. This is going back in the early 70s when we were a little kid. I really don't remember much of that at all. Then we came to Buffalo and stayed here, but my dad was a diehard Yankee fan. So I became a Yankees fan before I even knew who the Buffalo Bills were. I think today, and I'm still a Yankees fan, but I got to be honest with you, life, if something had to suffer because of life, it's the Yankees and baseball in general for me. Mm-hmm. Between having a regular job and now I do this podcast 5 days a week, it's really hard to find time to. You got to give up something along the way.
I still 3 hours to watch a game.
Yeah, I also exactly, and I also, I have a part-time gig as well. Like I said, this show and other things going on. Kid, wife, yada yada yada, blah blah blah. Something had to give.
Right.
So for me, I still follow as best I can. Like I know the Yankees have won 5 in a row. I know they're playing well, and they're only a half game. They're 20 games over 500.
Yep.
I wrote this down. That's why I know it. I gotta get best to you people out there watching and listening. I wrote this shit down. That's how I know it. But yeah, anyway, my point is my baseball fandom has suffered the most in recent years, especially over the last couple of years because of all the things that are going on. You know what I mean? You get busy, like when the season starts for you for hockey and you're actually, you're grinding more and you're practicing the games and writing and shit all the time. Some things that you might have time to dabble in right now and get into as a hobby, you're not going to really have that time not as much anyway when the season starts.
Yeah, I'm catching up on like TV shows and movies that I've been like out of the loop on for the last like year. I'm so far behind on so many things.
All right, guys, that is going to do it for this episode. Thank you one more time, Imperial Pizza. I think they're getting ready to close. Yeah. We're closing the place down. So this was a true Yerdon After Dark. But this was a lot of fun, man. And it's cool. It's always good to have you on the show. But it's especially cool to be able to connect with you in person and sit down. I say it all the time. Setting this shit up is a pain in the ass. The cameras and this and that. But once you do, it's so worth it. This is just a different vibe. I like having you on StreamYard too. You know what I mean? Those are fun conversations. But to be able to sit down and hang out with you, have a beverage, get some wings, stuff like that. That's just next level stuff. So appreciate you very much, man.
Thanks for having me here. It's always fun, like getting to hang out and like this is like the time we can really catch up because like Bill stuff gets going. It's crazy. The Sabres stuff gets going, and it's like you got like enough time to like hang out. And it's like, oh, let me fit you into the schedule.
Yeah, that's when I got to start begging you to come on the show, right? But when it
you don't have to beg. You don't have to beg that hard. You ain't got to beg that hard.
Go to www.notedhockey.com. $5 per month. Of course, like I said, check out when Tim and Lance get back to podcasting when Maintenance Day. That is a great listen to. Not a lot of good Sabres podcasts out there. Let's just keep that shit real, man. But they're definitely one of them right there to listen to. So for Joe Yerdon, I am Patrick. Thank you and have a good weekend. Be back. Brand new shows on Monday.